Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to offer you this reflection on the third Sunday of Easter. When I was a little kid, I had all these dreams about what I wanted to be when I got older. I dreamed I wanted to be an astronaut. I dreamed I wanted to be Superman. I was kind of a weirdo, but I used to go to bed at night and pray for God to give me Superman's powers so I could do all kinds of good in the world. And then I'd wake up in the morning wondering if I could fly. So I try to jump and I got nothing. But I especially dreamed about being a running back for the LA Rams. And I mean, I loved the Rams and I knew I knew the names of all the offensive linemen. Who knows that stuff? So I used to have a football on my arm and I would run through the house and I'd zigzag around the furniture and my teddy bear was an outside linebacker and I'd blow right through his tackle and leap into the end zone, which was my bed, and the crowd would roar, which was my mother, saying, quit running in the house. But but we that's natural for little kids. We expect them to have dreams like that. In fact, wouldn't it be strange if you were to ask a child, what do you want to be when you get older? What do you dream about? And they were to say, I don't have any dreams. Would that strike us as odd? You're supposed to have dreams. Right. But somewhere along the way, as we get older, this sense sets in that we've got to quit dreaming. Get your head out of the clouds. You know, get real. And if somebody is kind of a dreamer, we tend to denigrate that person. We lose track of those dreams. But I tell you, life without a dream is drudgery. It's boring. And at its worst, it's grim. And I think that's what we encounter in the gospel today when we're hearing the story of the disciples leaving Jerusalem on the road to Emmaus. We can ask ourselves, what are they doing on this Easter Sunday, the day of Christ's resurrection? Well, what they're doing is they're getting out of Dodge. They did not want to have happen to them what happened to Jesus. They didn't want to have to be captured and suffer and be crucified. They were running for their lives. And for good reason, because everything that they had hoped for, their dream had been crucified. Their dream of the Messiah, of a new Jerusalem, a new way of life, all of that was over and done with. And even though they heard rumors about an empty tomb, it didn't stop them from saying, we're gone, we're done with this. And as it says in Luke's gospel, as they were on their way, they were conversing and arguing. They were caught up in all of this, which is easy to understand. Because whenever we have had a dream die, that's how we react. I mean, and all of us have experienced that. All of us have had a dream die. If someone that we deeply love dies, well, a part of us dies with them. And we can be caught up in all of the emotion of that moment. Or if we have some catastrophe happen, like we lose our job or we lose our house or something like that, we can be so swept up in the whirlwind of emotion that, like those two disciples on the road, Jesus could appear right in front of our eyes as he did theirs and not recognize him because of all that is happening inside their hearts. And we see Jesus walking with them, asking, what are you arguing about? And, they responding, say, what do you mean, what are we arguing about? What are we talking about? We're talking about what just happened, the death of this dream of Jesus of Nazareth. And the story relates how they walked with Jesus for a while and got to the point where they invited him to have dinner with them. And then at dinner, reminiscent of the Last Supper and the breaking of the bread, they recognized him. And they even said to one another, did not our hearts burn within us? Their dream was alive. It came back to life. And even though it was late at night and therefore dangerous to travel, nevertheless, they hurried back to Jerusalem that very night so they could tell the apostles what they had seen. And the apostles, in turn, told them what they had seen, that Christ had resurrected, that the dream had come back to life. And they came back to life with it. So let me ask you, what's your dream? Dream for yourself? That might be a difficult question to answer right away. One of the things I used to do with my staff, we would go on a little day's retreat, and one of the questions I had for them to ask themselves is, what would you do differently in your life if you were 10 times braver? What would be different if you were braver? And the answers were fantastic. I'd never forget this one guy said, if I were 10 times braver, I learned how to play the piano. I've always wanted to, but it takes time to practice, and who has that kind of time? But if I was braver, 10 times braver, I'd find the time and I'd learn how to play the piano. And the one secretary said, if I were 10 times braver, me and my husband, we've been putting off starting our family because we're trying to get more money and all that kind of stuff. But I'm tired of waiting. I don't want to wait anymore. If I were 10 times braver, I'd just go home to my husband and say, let's start having babies because we'll figure out the money part later on. And when we were responding to that question, there was so much energy, so much life. People were so excited, which is what happens when we start dreaming dreams. So, I ask you again, what would you do if you were 10 times braver? What is your dream? Well, that may be, like I said before, a tough question to answer. But if you were to ask a parent, what is your dream for your child? Well, that would not be a hard question for them to answer at all. Parents begin dreaming about their child and their child's future as soon as that baby's born. They have all kinds of dreams for their child. One of the things that I talk about when I'm preparing couples for marriage, I say to them, now, this is your marriage, right? Your marriage, right? Right. Wrong. It is your marriage, but it's your parents' marriage too, because they've been dreaming about this day forever. They've been dreaming about you finding the right person. They've been dreaming about grandchildren. They've been dreaming about walking you down that aisle. It's their dream too. Parents have dreams for their kids. And so maybe our parent, God our Father, did you ever think that He has a dream for us? Yes. And that dream is called Jesus Christ. He dreamed about the divine entering into the world of man, and in doing so, transforming it. That mankind would breathe in the divine, that we would take this Christ into our lives, and we would begin once again being that which He made us to be, creatures in His image and in His likeness. That is His dream for us, that the human becomes divine, and that we live that kind of life. And this dream of God called Jesus Christ, what does it look like? Well, can you imagine someone saying about you, gosh, what integrity she or he has. Such a person, such an honest person, so truthful. You always know where you stand with them. They say yes when they mean yes and no when they mean no. Gosh, they have such integrity. Wouldn't you love someone to say that about you? I mean, wouldn't you love people to say about you, boy, they're honest, aren't they? They're so truthful. Who wouldn't want to hear something like that? You know, my dad was one of the kindest men I've ever known. He never said a mean thing about anybody. I wish I could say as much for his son, But that's the way he was. And wouldn't you love to hear said about you? Never said not a mean bone in their body. Who wouldn't want to hear people say they're so compassionate, they're so loving, they're so forgiving. I don't know how they forgive the way they do, but they do. Well, all of those things that would be so wonderful for us to hear said about ourselves, that's the dream. That's the dream called Jesus Christ, the dream that God has for us, that we become the people he created us to be, that we become the man, the woman that we've always wanted to be, that we breathe in the divine and we become that which God created. So, today, what's our dream? Well, may our dream be God's dream. May our dream be the dream called Jesus Christ. And may we dream to be just like him. People of great truth, of great integrity, of great compassion, of great forgiveness. May we dream God's dream of being just like Jesus Christ. P.S. So, what would you do differently in your life if you were 10 times braver? Give it some thought. Because I guarantee you, whatever it is, if you were 10 times braver, you'd start living that dream.